Welcome to the Launch Anxiety Podcast. I'm Roya Dedeaux, a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I work with teens and their parents to help you all navigate the scary space that is growing up and being a happy and healthy adult. Hello, my fine feathered friends. Welcome again to the Launch Anxiety Podcast. I'm Roya Dedeaux. Today we're going to talk about teenagers and their big, bad emotions. Not just bad, I shouldn't say that. Big emotions, big, strong, intense, passionate, all of those big feelings. But they're not always bad. In fact, I want to back up entirely because philosophically, I do not believe that emotions are bad. One of my clients made fun of me actually last week. They quoted me at myself as I was saying these words. And they said, I know, emotions are information. So today, that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about your teenagers and their big, intense feelings, the information they're giving you, and what to do with all of that information, because it can be a lot. I want to also let you know, those of you who are watching, I am going to be working on my hexagon quilt while we chat. If you're listening, I also encourage you to grab a project, grab a craft, do some doodling, keep your hands busy. But and I'll show you what I'm working on when I'm done talking here. But I always find that I am more effective at speaking and thinking when my hands are busy. So I'm working on a English paper piecing quilt while we talk. All right, so how can I help my teen manage their strong emotions? I mean, I am a therapist, so I am kind of in the business of people's feelings. That's what they come to me with. So I might have a bit of a skewed sample, but I also was a very emotional teenager myself. And this is one of the things that parents come to me often with, I don't know how to help. Like, it's fine. They get to have their feelings. I understand that their feelings are normal. I don't want to shame them for it, but I don't know what to do to help them through those feelings. And the teens I work with honestly have a lot of the same questions. They know that their feelings matter. 2024 is a grand time to be a therapist because people are validating their feelings. They're not trying to shove them down, but they don't always know what to do with all of them. They don't always make sense. They're often so overwhelmingly, tidal-wavingly strong. They want to know how to cope with them, how to compartmentalize them, when to act, when to sit with them. I mean, it's really, all of it's very difficult. So hopefully today, this podcast will help you parents feel a little more confident and secure in how to help your teens through all those big feelings. When I was younger, I had a bestie. She lived a couple hours away. And so the summer, I think I was 14, 15 in there, I actually got to go visit her for weeks and weeks. And it was wonderful. She lived in a beach community with a great bus system. And so it was one of the first, my first experiences at just teenage independence. We would take buses all over the town and go write poetry in parks and blow bubbles on the bus. And it was just a magical time in my life. She knew me better than anybody. In fact, so just so you know, as I tell the rest of the story, we're still friends. I talked to her this week. All of my journals are, they're not dedicated to her, but if something were to happen to me, she gets access to them and decides what happens to them, like fast friends. Steadfast friends, I should say. But this summer, when I was visiting her, at some point, she told me that being around me was like trying to take a drink from a fire hose. And I remember kind of laughing and thinking, haha, that's clever. And then I also remember my stomach sort of twisting and my heart getting kind of heavy and everything inside me sort of tightening and getting a little rigid and just that heavy sinking feeling. Because I had always been a kid who was a lot for people. I was a kid who was too loud, had too many ideas, couldn't figure out how to take up my fair share of any conversation. I was always very self-conscious about being an outgoing, extroverted, talkative person, and knew that I didn't have a good balance on how often I should raise my hand in a class situation, for example, or just, I don't know, I was the kid who, even when I was younger, would use too many of the supplies, or I would use all the neon and all the bright colors, and I had no editing. I was just a lot, and I was aware that I was a lot, and I would vacillate between trying to just accept myself for how intense I was, and then different techniques to try to I'd make sure that one other person raised their hand before I did, things like that. So I tried to manage it. I tried to accept it. This has been a big part of my upbringing, was thinking about just that kind of intensity. So when this friend of mine said that, it hit pretty hard that even this person who I loved and adored and who knew me better than anybody thought of me as being too much and too intense. I can't remember if it was her or somebody else. I think it was her. That same trip said something about like having me stay as a guest was having a roller coaster in their room or something. Like, I might have overstayed my welcome. Who knows? But good thing we're still friends. That's why I prefaced with that. But I certainly had a lot of feelings. And so I come to this topic not only as a therapist who's worked with thousands of families and teens and their parents, but also as a kid and teenager who this topic was really, really relevant to me. One of the big things is I just want to acknowledge to parents that it is hard. I can not even imagine what my folks went through, the amount of just like deep breaths they had to take, how many conversations they had with each other away from me about, let's just ride this out and see where it goes. Because it is hard. It's so hard to watch your teen go through big ups and big downs. And it's so interesting. That's something that fills a fair number of my sessions, actually, are parents knowing that they probably shouldn't do that kind of processing about their teen with their teen, but needing a place to process and say it out loud and have a sounding board. And so a fair number of my parent sessions have to do with them worrying about their teen's big feelings in a safe space that's not putting more pressure on their teenager. So, all right, how do we help navigate? The first big piece to this that I genuinely wish that I could like somehow bottle and provide to parents. Like I wish there was just a magic wand, a pill, a button you press that could make this possible, because this is definitely one of those easier said than done things. But I want to remind you that you do not have to attend every single party you're invited to. Just because your teenager is riding that roller coaster does not mean that you have to be buckled up in the seat beside them. Take a breath and hear that again. Just because your teenager is having big feelings doesn't mean you have to share the same feelings. I think that's really hard, particularly for those of us who care about our teens, are connected to our teens, are best friends with our teens, are there with them for their, ups and downs. We've got relationships with our teenagers where they actually want to talk to us and share things with us. It is so hard not to adopt those feelings as our own. But it is very important that you try to keep one level of distance, to have it be a vicarious feeling as opposed to owning it yourself. If you have something that, let's say, you're really sad about, something big, like say happened at work, okay, and you are very upset, and you come home and you tell your spouse about this thing that made you sad at work, and they have the same level, they match your feeling about it, it sort of detracts from it, doesn't it? It's different than if they are commiserating with you, if they're saying, oh my gosh, that must be awful for you. That's different. But if they are expressing to you that they personally are having the same level of feeling as you do about something that happened to you, suddenly it makes it not about you as much, doesn't it? And you are thinking now about their feelings, like they've kind of turned it into being about them. It's kind of selfish to do. And unfortunately, we parents do that more often than we'd care to admit, where our kid is having a thing and we make it about our feelings. So one of the most loving things we can do for our teenagers who are having these big feelings is help keep it be about them and their big feelings. You don't need to be on that roller coaster, all right? Again, being compassionate, commiserating, reflecting back at them how hard that thing is, all good things. But it doesn't have to become yours, okay? This happens with non-negative feelings too. And I find this to be really interesting. Sometimes a teen is like really happy about something or excited about a new project or a new band or whatever the thing is. And the parent jumps on board with so much fervor that, again, it becomes about them and it stops being about the teenager. And very often the teens then pull back because they don't need you to feel more about the thing than they do. It can be very off-putting to your teens. So if it's about your teen, let it be about your teen. Take your cue from them. Think about, I have the visual in my head of them on a roller coaster and you're not there, but you're standing watching them. You're taking the picture of them. You're waving as they zip by. You can see it, you understand, but you have to maintain some adult perspective, which means not being on the ride with them. The second thing I think that really helps teens with their big feelings, and this is a place where you can really actively logistically help, is give them all the outlets. Every single kind of cathartic release, emotional outlet you possibly can. And I'm not saying like just hand them a journal. I mean, every single kind of outlet you possibly can think of might not be enough. They might need a ridiculous, extreme number of different types of outlets. For me, it was art. I needed journaling, I needed painting, I needed ceramics and printmaking, and I can't even think of all the different things I did. I needed a lot of things, all right? Your teens need outlets. It's a huge part of how we manage our emotional needs. We have to express ourselves. Teens are in the business of figuring out who they are. They're in the business of having big, intense feelings and then having to sort through and categorize and identify and understand. And it's really, really hard to do in your own head without seeing it on canvas or paper in some way. From a narrative therapist perspective, by the way, giving them some sort of creative outlet for them to do outside of their own head is a hugely beneficial thing. We call that externalizing. So when you take, especially if it's a negative feeling or they're questioning or doubting themselves, if you take those feelings and get it out where you can look at it and it becomes a little bit separate from you, that's externalization. And it's important. It helps you identify things without making them your identity. It helps you have some perspective. It helps it's kind of the difference between someone saying like, I am anxiety or I am an anxious person versus sometimes I have anxiety or there's moments where I'm anxious. So externalizing those things is really important. And I have to say, this is one of the reasons why I think that as humans, that's why teens have big feelings. It sounds so cheesy, but it's a superpower. Big people with big feelings are catalysts. They make change happen. They start revolutions. They care, and so change happens. We need it. We need them as a society to have these huge feelings, and we need them to make art about it and write about it and protest about it and talk about it for hours and hours and hours. And just we as a society really need the passion that teens bring to the table. Even if that can come across as unhappiness or discomfort, generally speaking, if a teen is able to access those outlets and work through them, having big feelings is individually, emotionally healthy, and it's societally healthy as well. So give as many expressive outlets as you possibly can. And while we're talking about that, I'm going to put a little plug in here for my online art group for teens, because it's one of the things that I have found it's the most helpful for. We meet a few times a week. It's all video chat, and I give very open-ended prompts. And I give suggestions of the kind of art or medium that the teens might want, but it's super open-ended. Most of the teens do their own thing anyway. Nobody has to be on video if they don't want to, because my goal is not to make a certain kind of art. My goal is not to make the teens do anything. My goal is to provide the space and conditions where they can process all about themselves, where they can express themselves, and they can do it in as low stakes a way possible so that they actually get something from it. I don't want to add anxiety. So check out my online art group for teens. And yeah, it's a place where big feelings get processed as a group. It is great. So one of the other pieces is that there are a lot of different types of outlets. Like I said, I was and still am primarily a artistic, expression-y kind of a person, but physical outlets are important too. And I will say, I don't think that it's mutually exclusive. I think a lot of the art I did was also a physical outlet. I'm thinking about like collages that I made where it was like a full body experience where I'd rip up magazines and I'd make huge poster boards. And so there is definitely some physical outlet happening with a lot of different types of art. But I want you to remember that also, and this is a tool you can give your teens, that very often, especially if you have to like compartmentalize, if you're having the big feeling, but you recognize, I need to figure out how to be more in control, and not even control, but have choice over, am I going to have this feeling now, or do I need to put it down for a minute so I can do something else? There are lots of physical outlets you can help your teen access. And I don't mean just exercise, but even things like going in water. That's a really big one for me, one that I use to this day. If I can swim, that's my go-to choice, but I can't always, and I recognize not everybody can. So even something like taking a drink of water or putting water on your face, taking a shower, looking at a picture of water. I mean, there are some physical outlets there that help you sort of break the feedback loop as well that happens when you're in an intense feeling. And you've got the neurotransmitters, the chemicals in your brain associated with that big feeling. Doing something physical can kind of help you move past it, let those dissipate. So something else to think about is how can you help lead your teen to water? Don't make them drink. I didn't mean to say that, but you know what I mean. Singing, music, other important outlets. Going and accessing places where other people have explored their emotions. Singing is a physical outlet as well. In fact, I remember when I was prepping for the birth of my first kid, we did all these awesome like alternative birthing classes. And one of the things that the instructor really, really encouraged was making a playlist that you could sing to. And I have to say, I sang my way through all my deliveries. Definitely helpful. And in case you're wondering, it was the Buffy the Vampire soundtrack that got me through. So there's that. But also listening to music, finding places where other people have poured their heart and soul, where they've already paved the emotional path. There's solidarity there. There is help. It's like somebody else who's walking 6 feet down a dark path with a lantern. You know, you can navigate big feelings in a safe way that way because someone else has already been there. I find a lot of parents that's actually something that is easier for them to do to connect with their teens in these big feelings is don't try to have a conversation with your teen about how they feel. Send songs back and forth to each other. It's one of the things we do in the art group as well, actually, is they will often recommend music and then they can't help it. They'll explain why they're recommending that song. And so try it for yourself too. Like if you've got a big feeling one day, send a song to your teen and say like, ugh, this is just, you know, what I'm in today. See if you can speak a different language. So I just want you to remember that listening to music, spending hours and hours and hours where it seems from the outside like all your teen is doing is like headphones in staring at the ceiling, that is part of emotional regulation and it's important for emotional maturity and development. One other thing that adults can do that it feels maybe a little harder sometimes, and it's hard to consider this like an action that you're really doing for their emotional regulation and helping them through big feelings, is for you to facilitate other relationships. Relationships matter a lot. It's a huge part of this puzzle. And sometimes we want it to just be our relationship that is great and fixes things, but it is part of our job as parents to help our teens manage and facilitate other relationships as well. And really, there can be not enough other adults who are invested in the well-being of your teenagers. So spend some time really helping facilitate that. And that's a logistical kind of facilitate. Like you're going to have to drive them places and pick them up and wait outside of workshops and things like that. You also get to help facilitate their friendships because as much as many of those big feelings are going to feel like they're a result of that friend drama or whatever it is, it's still healthy for your teen to have those friendships and also to have the drama that goes with them. We have to figure ourselves out. And so things in a teen friendship circle can change quickly and dynamically. So don't make assumptions about who's close to who or why. Be curious, stay open to hearing more about it. Don't become better friends with any of your teen's friends than they are, but facilitate. That's really important. All right. Okay. The other piece, last piece, is for you to model all of this because that's super easy, right? I think a lot of times when parents say like, yes, absolutely, I model for my teens that like I go to therapy or I model for them how I make decisions or how I manage my own feelings. A lot of times the parents model just part of that picture and it's hard. Like don't just model the solutions. That's not enough. Model how you go from struggle to solution and back around again. Give your teens the age appropriate, situation appropriate, full picture if you can. All right. So they've got big feelings. You've got feelings about those big feelings. Try to do your own work separate from them. If it's pushing any buttons, if it's giving you any triggers, they get to have their feelings and you facilitate as many creative, social, emotional, physical outlets as you possibly can for them. All right, this is what I've been working on. Those of you listening, I'm holding up my hexagon quilt. I'm starting to put the little pieces together. I'll put some pictures in the notes for you. And if you need any help with any of these pieces, by the way, I want to encourage you to check out launchanxiety.com and get your free parent guide to navigating the teen years. It's a 40-page workbook, and every page has exercises, resources, things to think about, actual exercises and writing prompts on a huge variety of topics that your teen is struggling with. So hopefully it's helpful, and I will talk to you soon.